It's 1 year of Friedrich Merz in office as German Chancellor this week, and 1 in 5 Germans say he's doing a good job. Only 1 in 5. Like any true political podcast would, we'll try and take stock of what truly has been a tough year for Merz and his government. Hi, I'm Nina Haase, and I couldn't have wished for better companions to look at the highs and the lows with than our chief political editor and my fellow host of this podcast, Michaela Küfner. So good to have you here. And ta-da! Our bureau chief from Washington, Ines Pohl, is in town. You've been on the line many times on this podcast, but it's really great to have you here. And so we'll look at Friedrich Merz and all the lows and the highs. And there is a very big low staring us in the faces, right? The bromance between Friedrich Merz and Donald Trump is truly over. Michaela, maybe you can pick up from last week's podcast where things were already in the making.
Yes, it's been a very rocky couple of days for those relations between Friedrich Merz, and actually that was his first big success. He went to the White House. Ines, you were there at the beginning of his first term just over a year ago, and within weeks of coming into office, and they hit it off. They speak the kind of business lingo, and this is also something that Friedrich Merz showed as evidence of his leadership success over the past 12 months. Then came these comments in front of a classroom and essentially talking about the humiliation of the United States over Iran, questioning whether there is any plan, although he had said that before. And Donald Trump reacted by announcing not just the troop withdrawal of some 5,000 troops, but also there seems to be consensus that those Tomahawk missiles are not coming to Germany, that Germany was banking on to close a defense gap until the European ELSA system is on track. So those missiles could have reached far into Russia. That was much needed deterrence. And the real killer is the announcement that tariffs on cars would go up from 10% to 25%. And 2/3 of that volume affects Germany. It hits the car industry that is already bleeding, that has lost its cash cow, which is China. The Chinese market is really pointing downward for the major automakers, leading to Volkswagen saying they're decreasing capacity. They're partly state-owned, so that is quite something in the German context. So a big blow.
Also for German mental health, right? I mean, Volkswagen, yes, the German car brand.
It's not just a household brand. It's also an indicator of how well Germany and the German economy as a whole is doing. So Donald Trump wanted Merz to feel the pain. He is feeling the pain. He does protest too much that those two events are linked, but they clearly are, and they haven't spoken since. And that is the real problem. Where does this relationship go from now? Exactly. Will Trump pick up the phone to Merz again?
What do you think, Ines?
No, Friedrich Merz has to call or try to call Donald Trump. Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, is one of the rare people who really gets under the skin of President Trump. That's remarkable, because normally he doesn't really care. He cares about himself, he cares about his family, and nothing else matters.
But what is it about Friedrich Merz that
I think Michaela pointed out a very important point. It is really this business talk they share. And it matters, we have been talking about that, but it truly matters that Friedrich Merz is tall. He carries him well. Donald Trump likes that. And I was there in the first meeting and the second meeting where we were there together, Michaela. They come along well with each other.
Why don't we just listen to that atmosphere that was there at the time?
It's an honor to have you. As you know, the Chancellor just won a great election, very, very strong election. A very respected man. I could have a meeting with a man who's become a friend of mine, and we've known each other for a little while in some very interesting times, and we get along. Our countries get along very well. We have a great affinity for each other.
Oh, wow. This was the start of this new Netflix series, and now we're in season 2, right? I mean, season 2, oh my God, that bromance is over. What happened?
Well, I don't know if it's over. We shall see. We also know that Donald Trump is flip-flopping. I mean, he is under a lot of pressure because of the Iran war. You know, his poll numbers are really in the basement. Today it's 34%. I just looked them up. He doesn't really know how to get out of this oil crisis, of the gas crisis. I mean, gas prices are still on a top high in the United States. So he needs, that's his personality, a moment to show his strength. And he doesn't like anything better than downplaying other people. And of course, Friedrich Merz is important. He's known in the United States. He's respected amongst also Republican lawmakers. They think that he could be someone with whom the United States can work on kind of long-term matters. That wasn't the case, of course, with Olaf Scholz, and also very problematic before with Angela Merkel. Will it stay like that or not? It really depends how Friedrich Merz reacts. I think it's not on Donald Trump. He will wait and see for the moment. And I don't know, you know Friedrich Merz much better than I. Do you think he will pick up the phone and call President Trump?
I am very much convinced that there are attempts ongoing to get Donald Trump on the phone. But to me, the real test of how much of that friendship is still there is whether Trump will actually pick it up. We learn about these calls afterwards. There are good reasons for that.
That we don't learn about the attempts.
Yes.
That we learn about the successful phone calls.
Because they make politicians look bad if the other side doesn't pick up. But as far as Donald Trump is concerned, he clearly made his point. He sent a very clear message. And this is damaging the standing of Friedrich Merz also amongst his peers.
And also, speaking of phone calls, this is something that I noticed that it was basically overlooked, or it was a side remark by many people, that Donald Trump's decision not to station Tomahawk long-range missiles, something that Joe Biden had promised would happen in Germany to fill that gap, that is something that was decided and announced just after a phone call between Donald Trump and, no, not Friedrich Merz, Vladimir Putin. Right? So this is something where Donald Trump seems highly influenced by whoever he spoke to last. And then, this is something that is long in the making. This is something where you can't just say, okay, I'm not sending you this. This is not a toy. I mean, these are highly complex weapon systems. So, of course, they've been long deployed elsewhere. And this, also the withdrawal of soldiers, this is not something that you can have a snap decision about just because somebody said something bad about you in a school meeting. But I find that highly underreported, the fact that Donald Trump reacts to what Vladimir Putin wants. Because, of course, the Tomahawks were there to provide deterrence, not to attack Russia. But, Russia is pointing weapons at Europe from Kaliningrad.
I just want to draw a parallel. I mean, first of all, it was never seen as a given that Donald Trump would stick to a commitment.
No, he never promised
from the
that,
Biden
right.
era. He never did. And it was an issue that the Germans just chose not to raise because they were afraid of a no. But of course,
but that's
the timing...
very important to point out.
Yeah.
We also have to be fair
with
President Trump. And these 5,000 troops, the withdrawal, that was in the making many, many years. Obama talked about it. Then, of course, Biden dialed back also because of the war in Ukraine. But it doesn't really come out of nowhere, right? Just for so I'm thankful that you give us this little bit of a bigger picture.
And that battalion that is being withdrawn, that is Romania has already seen one withdrawn that was sent by Biden in direct response to the Russian attack on Ukraine. At the same time, wind back, and it feels like longer than just a couple of months ago, but when Donald Trump suddenly tabled this 28-point plan, his own Republican camp felt that this was a hoax. They thought that this was directly from the Kremlin. That was in November. And that's when Friedrich Merz really showed his strength. He reacted very fast. Not only did he get the Europeans united while he was traveling to South Africa, I was traveling with him. That was a real moment of panic, and he got it together. He got the Europeans united. He convinced Donald Trump to step back from that 28-point plan. He accepted a lot of the European points, and it followed a round of negotiations on Ukraine in Berlin. That was a political success. Now we're a couple of months on, and that is unthinkable. That's just not good. Not only are the Europeans no longer at the table over Ukraine, but getting that kind of momentum back here seems unthinkable because Friedrich Merz, putting it plainly, refused to let the Germans, the Europeans, get dragged into the Iran war, which clearly Donald Trump needed to strengthen his own position and to find alliances and get other countries invested there. And that was a clear no. And, the last Oval Office meeting was all about that, that careful balancing act of how do you keep Trump on your side without fulfilling what clearly was his expectation of getting yourself, your own country, your own people invested in the Iran war.
But I think the German Chancellor played it so well.
He did, yeah.
He said, of course we help when the moment is there. I can't rephrase his exact saying, but basically saying, once they found some kind of
when
a
the war is
deal,
over.
When the war is over.
Define when the war is over for me, nobody.
But nevertheless, and from a US perspective, as I'm living in the United States and just visiting Berlin, I thought, wow, that's very well played. He shows Trump, we are with you, we are on your side. Not at the moment. We didn't start this war with you, but we don't leave you alone. And I thought that's really good. It was on the one hand really strong, also showing Donald Trump so far and not any further. Mm-hmm. We are not a part of this war, but once you got a way out of it or you find some kind of a deal with Iran, we of course will help you, also because of our interest, because we share interests.
And
this is something what Donald Trump
delivering, right? I mean, we sent our reporter to Kiel, where the minesweeper boat was already deployed this week, because of course these things do take time before they reach the region. So what has happened now is that Germany has sent one of those boats that is one of the best around the world when it comes to these capacities, that they are on the way and they could go to Hormuz if indeed the situation eventually becomes stable.
Exactly. Physically deployed, not legally deployed.
No.
Because there is, of course, this broad commitment from the Europeans, also partly with the French. It's kind of a broader group, and that's a legal requirement in Germany. You also need a mandate from the German Bundestag, but you need a vote here in German Parliament, which of course is a very specific German thing, whereas the US president can just deploy a ship. The German Chancellor cannot. He needs a majority for that. But at the same time, we saw also in that last meeting that they had how Donald Trump felt about his allies, still on paper, who are not willing to engage, and that he lashed out. I asked a very plain question in the Oval Office: what do you expect from your allies? And he lashed out against Spain, said he would stop all trade with Spain, which he cannot do. He lashed out against Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, and we did see some appeasement. It just plainly is that from the German Chancellor, because we all remember that threat by Donald Trump of erasing an entire civilization. Friedrich Merz then explained this as part of the rhetorical strategy towards Iran. So he completely downplayed that, which really is quite something for a German Chancellor to go to that level of understanding. At the same time, he stuck by his line not to get dragged in. And when he, in that school setting, then said what he felt.
Let's just watch this again, Michaela, please, because it all
went downhill from here.
Books. And to everyone who's watching or who's not watching, just picture Friedrich Merz on a school stage with nice decoration behind him. And I always find it odd to watch this clip because, of course, it's
they're handcrafted stars in the background. So let your imagination run wild on that.
The Americans clearly have no strategy. And the problem with conflicts like this is always that you don't just have to go in. You also have to get out again. We saw that all too painfully in Afghanistan for 20 years. We saw it in Iraq. So this whole affair is ill-considered, to say the least. At the moment, I cannot see what strategic exit the Americans are now opting for, especially as the Iranians are obviously negotiating very skillfully, or rather very skillfully not negotiating, and letting the Americans travel to Islamabad only to leave again without any results. An entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership, in particular by those so-called revolutionary guards.
So this is something that we already played last week in the episode. And Michaela, I just really have to tell you that I listened to what you said at the time, and you said, I'm watching very closely for signs by Donald Trump whether this is going to blow over or whether he's going to open a feud with Friedrich Merz. And if he decided to pick on Germany, he can give Germany a very hard time. So now we've got the answer, right? A week later.
I've made it. I'm getting quoted on Berlin Briefing. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And that was quite a blow. And I just want to highlight that how you just heard Friedrich Merz speak. We're not allowed to talk about background as we get with him, kind of off the record stuff. That's exactly how he speaks off the record. And he dropped his guard completely, and he just got immersed in the setting, and he just wanted to come across really well to these teenagers. Always a very dangerous crowd.
Yeah. And it's so different from how he presented himself in the Oval Office.
Yeah.
He speaks there as if it would be a backgrounder, as if he wouldn't be aware holding a microphone and basically speaking to the world. I would like to bring in another aspect, if I might, Madam Moderator.
Well, I'm not sure. Yeah.
We can try. But Michaela also kind of mentioned that a little bit, and that's a huge concern, again, from my perspective, living as a German European in America. Friedrich Merz was the last man standing from Europe these days. Of course, there is Italy, but that's also a little flaky.
It's not a man in Italy.
It's not a man, but I use this phrase not like gender-wise. And that is really concerning. And that's maybe one reason why Trump is getting closer to Putin. He always needs someone having the feeling, this is my buddy. Mm-hmm. This is my deal maker. And it was the German Chancellor for a fairly long while, actually. And that he's not in this place anymore. Who would be there from Europe to take this place? It's not Starmer anymore if he survives. It's definitely not Macron. This is totally over. This will never come back. Who else is there? And that is a problem. We all know that President Trump will be traveling to China soon. That shall be interesting, which deals are made there. Definitely not in the favor of Germany and Europe after that. And I think this is something we as Europeans, should focus on. Who could fill this gap? Or is Friedrich Merz willing, to close ranks with some other European leaders? Maybe a joint meeting again. Some found it embarrassing that so many European leaders went to Donald Trump. We have these pictures in mind, right, where they were all sitting on this long table and kind of doing a kowtow to the king. But in a way it worked. But now there is nobody, and then Donald Trump moves towards Putin. That is really a concern of mine.
Although I question the logic whether that's why he moves towards Putin. I mean, he admires Putin, and there's a very long track record of him consulting with Putin and talking about his leadership as well. On the glass half full side, there no longer is the disruptive figure of Viktor Orban in Hungary, who received a visit from none other than the US vice president to try and get him elected again. So clearly for Donald Trump, the person he needs to deal with, having lost that ally in disrupting Europe and pushing Europe to be easier to handle for the Americans, is Friedrich Merz. And now that Merz has come round to going into opposition when it comes to Iran, because the pain is too great, and because he also now finally has decided that he wants to stand on the right side of history over this. And he's paying the price for this. Trump will have to deal with Merz, but before he wanted to deal with Friedrich Merz, because he kind of liked him. Right? I mean, they kind of...
I don't know if they liked... I honestly, I'm in the Oval fairly often. I'm a cooler there. I think Donald Trump, and I mean that.
Yeah.
As I said, he doesn't like anybody but himself. I mean, when you walk through Washington now, you see all these huge, big images of him. He's hanging like huge posters everywhere. Everything is named after him. You're following the news. He wants to build an ark. He's like,
yes.
But they had a way. He respected him, I think, as a possible deal maker.
That's as good as it gets.
Exactly, that's as good as it gets.
Okay, but this is also an episode about 1 year of Merz. You've provided a very good bridge to get to the chapter. What did the Merz government do when it comes to Europe? I mean, we're sort of closing in now. We've talked about Donald Trump, but I do want to get through these other very important issues as well. What did they do on Europe? Where is the AfD in all of this? Then Friedrich Merz and the government communicating to the public. Why are they so unsuccessful in the polls? What is that? Then migration, the economy, and trouble at Mills. So with the Social Democrats at home. Michaela, pick one of those issues.
I was just going to say, do you want a 30-second answer on all of that?
30 seconds on all of them, please.
Well, I mean, to put it plainly, Friedrich Merz didn't deliver what he said he would in that first year. And none other than himself.
Which is the biggest promise that he didn't?
The economy. He himself defined the economy as the benchmark for everything else. His European leadership. In fact, Ursula von der Leyen was here at a party.
President of the European Commission.
Exactly. She was here at a party gathering of his conservative CDU-CSU. And she herself said it's paramount that Germany manages these reforms and that the German economy is strong. That didn't happen. The European average growth is 1.5%. Germany's latest prediction is 0.3. Before it was 0.4. So even before factoring in Iran,
last fall it was 0.9, right? So I mean
that was the prediction. What actually happened was way below that.
Yeah.
So he's simply not delivering on his own definition.
How much is that his fault?
It is his fault because he said he could do it. He
couldn't have known about the Iran war.
Well,
I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No. But the Iran war only came in within this quarter. We're talking about 2025. So even if you completely leave out Iran, it didn't happen. What didn't happen was the autumn of reforms, not his wording, but he had promised a very swift, deep-cutting reform, clearly overstating what is possible in a coalition with the Social Democrat SPD. Just speaking before companies just 24 hours ago, less than 24 hours ago, he asked for patience because democracies take so long to implement reforms. Well, it appears that we were watching his learning curve in real time in what can actually be done. So he put the bar very high and now is learning the hard way that he created expectations which he simply didn't meet. I don't want to talk down the fact that while there's so much debate about the government infighting, at the same time, they did manage to bring into the parliament a major historic reform on healthcare. But that's only one of the three major issues. They were also going to tackle the entire social services and pension reform. That's a really big one. And that one, if it goes well and according to plan, won't come until early autumn, just before key regional elections, where we expect the far-right Alternative for Germany, particularly in the state of Saxony-Anhalt, to potentially make it into being able to form a regional government. That would be a historic
by themselves,
moment. By themselves, not an absolute majority in terms of voting outcome, because of the fragmentation, we could see them have a majority. Now, elections, it always matters what happens on election day, but that's what the polling right now is telling us. So you will, instead of having already launched these reforms months ago, you will be in the woods, knee deep in a ferocious debate about what Germans perceive to be the very foundation of the stability they so cherish here in Germany, which is the perspective that the pension system works and delivers for all. He's setting himself up for yet more trouble. And then on top of that, put the Iran war, which is already seeing people's bills rise. People can afford less groceries. The same issues that Donald Trump is having in the United States.
Are people aware in the United States just how unpopular the Merz government is in Germany?
You know, I mean, it depends who we ask, right? I mean, many people don't know who Friedrich Merz is. We also have to be quite honest here, make ourselves honest. For us, of course, the German-American, the transatlantic relationships are super important. For many Americans, they are not. Also, understandably, in a way. It's a big country. They deal with regional, local problems. I think the bigger talk of the town is really the AfD and the Brandmauer.
Firewall.
So, you know, and this is a question I get addressed.
The firewall, let's just explain the concept again, right?
Please.
So that, you know, the firewall is a concept where all the other democratically elected parties have decided not to collaborate with a party that is in part right-wing extremist, considered such by Germany's intelligence services and under observation.
And that is, according to polls, now the biggest party here, right? The strongest party with the biggest support from the people.
Yeah, even nationwide. I mean, Michaela was just talking about the regional elections in Saxony-Anhalt, which are coming up in the autumn, where they are looking at potentially gaining 41% of the votes, which is something that the Conservatives used to have in the past. And these times are long gone. But nationwide, they're looking at between 26 to 28, and that puts them ahead of Friedrich Merz's Conservatives.
They just ahead, just 1-2 percentage points. It's still within the margin of error, but it is
However, and this is like something many Americans don't understand. They say, hey, listen, this is a democratic, legit party. You know, it's not forbidden. How can you say the majority of the people, or at least a huge chunk of the voters, of those who would be voting, whatever, if they want this party in parliament because they vote for them, and all other parties say we don't work with them, this is not democracy. And this is, of course, something
what do you tell
which
them
J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio kind of, pointed their finger, especially J.D. Vance 2 years ago at the Munich Security Conference, saying, what is that? And that's very difficult to say, I try to explain the German way and our history and whatnot, but it brings you really in a tough space from how do you say Demokratietheoretische? Help me here. From a theoretical standpoint, how can democratic parties refuse to build a coalition with the strongest party in a country where coalitions are needed? So this is something also, of course, Donald Trump is watching closely. And I'm sure we will hear some remarks fairly soon when he talks about Germany again, about this very issue that Friedrich Merz really has lost the support within Germany.
But the real key point for Merz in this is that he's pegged his own political future on maintaining this firewall, and just before he was elected, slightly digressing, you can have a huge debate about that, by accepting AfD votes to get a majority for a non-binding motion on migration. People were out in the streets. There were thousands of people protesting outside the conservative CDU party headquarters. So, some people argue, look, particularly in the regions, particularly also in Saxony-Anhalt, even from its own conservative camp, come on, we need to be able to talk to them at least. We can have joint votes on something. That would be putting cracks into the firewall. But for the conservative CDU, CSU as a whole, this has nuclear potential of breaking up the conservative CDU from the inside if you see cooperation with the far-right AfD party.
Okay, but so from the outside, looking at Germany, we have a coalition which is not working well. You just talked about it. Friedrich Merz has huge problems fulfilling his promises also because he and his partner, the SPD, they don't click on many issues. Then there is the AfD, which is gaining ground also because they are not successful. So what is the answer here? Can he really hold firm to his I never will work with them? So, how can he rule a country when he's not able to find a coalition partner he wants to work with? And then there's the AfD.
And theoretically, he has 3 more years in office, right?
Well,
3 years.
But I want to give the answer that Merz is giving, but also the Social Democrats are giving.
Answer.
Yeah, absolutely. No, what he's saying is that voters have tasked these two parties, the Conservative CDU, CSU, and the Social Democrats, with launching reforms from the centre. The big tent parties, although the tent for the Social Democrats is very small now, it's no longer a big tent party. It's also no longer the Workers' Party. The AfD proved that they can get the workers on their side.
Because the nature of work has changed as well, and the SPD hasn't really understood that yet.
So the AfD is moving from the anti-migration party to the pro-workers party to anyway, he says the clear mandate is it has to be possible. And this is where they are stuck right now. They are partly delivering. I think it's important to mark that with all the public fighting, that there is one element of this reform in place, but it's not the big all-around revolutionary renewal that they promised all at the same time. Instead of doing it all at the same time, they're doing it bit by bit, and that creates more risk for tension within also this government. So that's where they stand.
And then there is, of course, something where the AfD does what all the right-wing parties in Europe are doing at the moment. They're just benefiting from crises. They're not presenting a positive agenda at all. And this is something where I think you also have to put it into perspective, how they moved from a party that was born out of Europe's debt crisis in the 2010s to an anti-Euro party. Then they used the migrant crisis of the mid-2010s. They reinvented themselves as an anti-immigrant party. Now we're not talking about migration because the Conservatives have effectively closed the borders around Germany at the moment. I mean,
it's stable for now. Let's put it that way, yeah.
Exactly. So we're not talking about it. So the AfD are not talking about it either. Then the party tapped into the anti-vaccine sentiment. So they're picking up every crisis and they don't need to deliver. At the moment, there are so many crises and Friedrich Merz and his government are not succeeding in presenting a united front when it comes to selling their successes. Where, there are areas where they're working behind the scenes. People, are saying the health reform, for example, is something where they're delivering, but that is underreported. That goes underreported because there are so many crises.
Exploiting weaknesses of the government is frankly the daily business of the opposition. It's a leading
but they are extremely flexible when it comes to what their identity is, right? I mean, they're basically the anti-party, which is fair enough. I mean,
I just think it's important to say that there's nothing per se undemocratic about it. So this is in the nature of the game. The question is, how can Merz prove or regain credibility? Because he has defined new lows in terms of personal popularity here in Germany, but also only 15% of Germans still believe that the government is doing a good job. That's really bad.
Yeah. So what is his strong point? Because we do need to wrap up, and I'm sure that we'll pick it up again. I want you to give our viewers and listeners something where they can take away something that they don't know about Friedrich Merz.
I guess his strong point is that he is unafraid of defining where, according to his conviction, Germany needs to be. In stark contrast to Angela Merkel and Olaf Scholz before him, both of them were only willing to speak about where Germany needs to get when they'd already worked it all out. And in that sense, Friedrich Merz seems to be not as focused on re-electability. He's willing to take the risk. And the reforms that have been pushed back time and time again, because every government before him ran into the same problems of it being too painful, of unpopularity. He's not afraid of that unpopularity. But now we're reaching a crucial moment where where the question is still open whether these bad polling figures will lead to fast and deep consensus or willingness to find a compromise between his Conservatives and the Social Democrats.
For someone who is criticized having not enough political experience here in Germany, I think coming back to Donald Trump and the United States, he has proven that he can do political talk, that he knows how to deal with someone like Donald Trump. As for me, being someone who really thinks that the transatlantic relationship is important for Germany and for Europe, it of course has to change. My hope is that he finds a way back to Donald Trump, to talk with him. And he's able to. He's able to find a way to talk with him. And Friedrich Merz can be able to regain that amount of trust which is possible with Donald Trump, but that they find a way back into talking with each other. And that would be good.
What's your estimate? When will we learn about a phone call?
We will only learn about it once it's happened. but it feels very long. It's a very long silence already for a chancellor who has in the past bragged about having such a good line of communication with Donald Trump and also having spontaneous calls with him. I just want to throw in the factor of actual military capabilities. I think the fact that Germany has these specialist minesweeping vessels, that's expertise that the Americans really need, and they don't have it themselves. And it's very rare that the Germans have something that the Americans
don't. That's true.
That could really be a game changer when conditions are right, and he is actually legally able to deploy them.
Well, I think we've put you up to date for now, and I'm sure that we'll pick up on this topic again. Thank you so much, Michaela and Ines. It's been fantastic half an hour, I thought. So if you enjoyed that as well, make sure that you subscribe to this podcast wherever you found us. And also we have a newsletter that comes out once a week that gives you other stories from Germany. And until next time, I hope you'll do well. See you then. Thank you.